Today's topic is the unheard side of one of the most recognizable figures in modern music. In Non-Existent 4 at Neverland Ranch, a series of alleged recordings revealed a private struggle hidden behind global fame. This documentary explores what truly happened behind those closed doors. On that cold winter night in 1984, deep within Neverland Ranch, a voice echoed through the darkness. A voice no one heard, no one knew about. Michael Jackson was the world's biggest pop star. But that night, when he locked himself in his private studio, he was trying to remember who he really was. The king of pop had become a prisoner of his own fame. And what happened in those secret recording sessions would change everything we thought we knew about him. The studio was his sanctuary, his escape from a world that had stolen his childhood. For months, Michael had been working on something different. Not the commercial hits that made him millions, not the dance tracks that filled stadiums. These were raw, emotional recordings, confessions of a man trapped between genius and madness. The tapes contained his deepest fears, his childhood trauma, and the price he paid for perfection. But what was really happening behind those soundproof walls? Every night at 3 a.m., when the world slept, Michael would disappear into his underground studio. The ranch staff whispered about strange sounds, not music, but something else. Crying, screaming, the sound of a man breaking apart and trying to rebuild himself through melody. His closest friends noticed the change. Quincy Jones later recalled, "Michael wasn't the same after those sessions. He'd found something in that studio, or maybe something had found him." The recordings from this period were unlike anything he'd ever created. Haunting, desperate, beautiful in their pain. The first tape was labelled simply, Gary, Indiana, 1958. In it, you could hear a 5-year-old Michael's voice, but it wasn't from his childhood. He had recreated his younger self, singing lullabies his mother never had time to sing. The innocence in his voice was heartbreaking, knowing what that little boy would endure. Fame had stolen his childhood, but in that studio, he was trying to give it back to himself. What drove the world's most successful entertainer to lock himself away and recreate his lost innocence? The second recording was darker. Titled The Price of Perfection, it captured Michael's internal battle with his father's abuse, the industry's demands, and his own impossible standards. You could hear him arguing with invisible figures, reliving moments of trauma, trying to understand how a child prodigy becomes a broken man. The studio became his confessional. Night after night, he poured his soul onto tape, creating a musical diary of pain that no one was meant to hear. But these weren't just recordings. They were therapy sessions with himself, attempts to heal wounds that fame had only made deeper. Then came the night that changed everything. December 15th, 1984. Michael had been in the studio for 18 hours straight. The ranch staff found him the next morning, unconscious at the mixing board, surrounded by dozens of tapes labelled with cryptic messages. The boy I never was. Dancing with shadows. When the music stops. What had he discovered about himself in those final hours? The recordings revealed a pattern that terrified even Michael. He had been unconsciously recreating his childhood trauma through music, but also finding a way to heal it. Each song was a step toward reclaiming the innocence that fame had stolen. The studio wasn't just where he made music, it was where he tried to save his own soul. But there was something else on those tapes. In the background of every recording, you could hear children laughing. Not from Neverland's amusement park, but from Michael's memory. He was trying to preserve the joy he'd lost, the childhood he never had, the innocence the world had taken from him. The final recording was the most shocking. Labelled The Real Michael, it contained 47 minutes of raw emotion. No instruments, no production, just a man talking to himself about the price of being the world's most famous entertainer. He spoke about the loneliness of fame, the impossibility of trust, and his desperate desire to simply be normal. I created a character called Michael Jackson, his voice whispered on the tape. But somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was underneath the glove, underneath the moonwalk, underneath the magic. These recordings, they're my way back home. The truth was more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, had been using his private studio to have conversations with the child he used to be. Through music, he was trying to heal decades of trauma, to find peace with his past, and to discover who he might have been if fame hadn't consumed his childhood. The tapes were never released. They remained locked away, a secret testimony to one man's struggle to find himself in a world that only wanted his performance. But those who heard them said they contained some of the most honest, vulnerable music ever recorded. Years later, after Michael's death, the studio was sealed. The tapes remain hidden, containing the real story of a man who gave the world everything, but could never give himself peace. Neverland Ranch stands empty now, but if you listen carefully on quiet nights, some say you can still hear the echo of a lost boy trying to sing his way back home. The question remains, in trying to heal his past, did Michael Jackson find the peace he was searching for? Or did those dark secrets follow him to the end? The answer lies buried with the man who moonwalked across our hearts, but could never dance away from his own shadows.